When one finger presses the repost button, does the world change? Today's youth answer this question daily, expressing their civic stance through smartphone screens. Digital activism has become an integral part of the identity of Generation Z, the first generation that has never known a world without the internet. TikToks about social justice, Instagram stories about the climate crisis, Twitter campaigns, and online petitions are shaping a new landscape of civic participation. Social media platforms have transformed into digital public squares for expressing protest, solidarity, and calls to action. Hashtags become the battle cries of movements, and memes, tools for spreading ideas. But what happens in the mind of a young person when they become part of a virtual movement? What psychological processes underlie the decision to support a particular initiative? And where does the line lie between a sincere desire to change the world and superficial participation for the sake of social approval? Understanding the psychological foundations of digital activism opens a window into the developing consciousness of the generation that will inherit our world and its problems. Behind every click and repost of a young activist lies a complex set of psychological needs. Adolescence is a time of self-discovery, identity formation, and defining one's place in the world. It is a period when young people particularly keenly feel the need to belong to a group of like-minded individuals. Online activism provides an ideal environment for satisfying this need. Here, one can instantly find thousands of peers who share your values and concerns about the future of the planet, social justice, or minority rights. Virtual communities become a space where a teenager feels, "I am not alone. There are many of us. We are a force." This sense of belonging to a group provides a feeling of security during a period when the developing personality is most vulnerable. The second fundamental need is for self-expression. Digital platforms allow young people to articulate their thoughts, values, and beliefs, to experiment with various identities in a relatively safe environment. By creating content on socially significant topics, a teenager doesn't merely express an opinion. They declare their stance to the world, forming their public self. The third key need is for significance and influence. Every like, comment, or repost confirms that a young person's voice carries weight, that their opinion can change something in this world. For a teenager, who often feels powerless and insignificant in a world controlled by adults, this is especially valuable. Why does the digital environment become the ideal platform for realizing these needs? The answer lies in the peculiarities of adolescent thinking and the specifics of the internet space. Teenagers are in the stage of forming abstract thinking and developing moral judgments. They begin to think about global problems, justice, the future of humanity. The online environment offers them a huge amount of information on these issues and the opportunity for immediate reaction. At the same time, the digital space lowers barriers to participation. There is no need to get parental permission, overcome geographical limitations, or possess special skills. All that's needed is a smartphone and a desire to be heard. The history of activism is the history of the evolution of the public voice. From the city squares of ancient Athens to modern hashtags, humanity has always sought ways to express collective opinion and bring about change. Youth movements hold a special page in this history. The 1960s brought student protests, hippies, and anti-war demonstrations to the world. The 1980s were remembered for the punk movement and environmental activism. The 1990s for anti-globalization and human rights advocacy. All these movements were united by physical presence, the tactile experience of a shared struggle. Shoulder to shoulder at rallies, hand in human chains, face to face at meetings. The new millennium and the digital revolution changed the very fabric of activism. The streets did not empty, but virtual spaces were added to them, endless territories without physical boundaries, where everyone's voice can potentially be heard by millions. Traditional activism required time, physical presence, and often personal courage in the face of possible repression. Digital activism lowered the barrier to entry to a minimum. A single tap on the screen can symbolically connect a person to a global movement. Psychologically, this transformation is fundamental. Traditional activism was built on the direct emotional experience of collective action, the energy of the crowd, the adrenaline of confrontation, the euphoria of shared victories. Digital activism offers a different experience, more individualized, yet globally connected. A young person can sit alone in their room, but feel connected to thousands of like-minded people around the world. Another key difference is speed and scale. While organizing a large-scale protest used to take weeks or months, today, a hashtag can go viral in hours, mobilizing millions. The Arab Spring, the hashtag #MeToo movement, Black Lives Matter, all demonstrated the unprecedented ability of digital platforms to catalyze social movements. Who am I in the digital world? This question becomes central for modern teenagers who construct their identity through the prism of online activism. Unlike previous generations, for whom self-determination primarily occurred through direct social interaction, today's youth actively shape themselves through public stances on social issues. Social media profiles transform into unique manifestos of values. Avatars change in support of movements. Bios are filled with meaningful hashtags, and feeds become curated selections of socially significant content. For Generation Z, the question, "What do you stand for?" becomes equivalent to, "Who are you?" This process of identification through activism has deep psychological roots. Adolescence is a period of active self-discovery and self-construction, when young people experiment with various roles and values. The digital environment provides unprecedented opportunities for such experiments, allowing them to try on different identities with minimal risks. By supporting a particular movement online, a teenager is not just expressing solidarity, they are declaring their belonging to a group of like-minded individuals, integrating their values into their own self-determination. Feminist, eco-activist, LGBTQ+ rights advocate. These identities become significant markers of personality, shaping self-perception and perception by peers. Interestingly, social networks amplify this process through mechanisms of social reinforcement. Every like under a post about the climate crisis, every supportive comment on a statement about social justice. These are microdoses of validation for the chosen identity. Social platform algorithms further strengthen this process by offering content that resonates with already expressed interests and values. In the digital world, we are never alone. Every post, every comment creates invisible threads connecting us with thousands of other people across the planet. This is the phenomenon of digital solidarity, a psychological mechanism allowing us to feel a deep emotional connection with people we have never met in person. When a teenager joins an online movement, an astonishing transformation occurs in their psychological space. The boundaries between I and we blur, forming a new collective identity. Research shows that the brain reacts to virtual group affiliation almost identically to physical presence in a community. The same neurotransmitters are produced, creating a sense of safety and acceptance. The mechanism of empathy formation in the digital space is particularly interesting. Young people reading stories of peers from other countries, watching videos from events, experience an emotional journey that psychologists call vicarious trauma or solidary suffering. This ability to empathize with distant events becomes a powerful motivator for activist behavior. Paradoxically, digital solidarity is simultaneously global and deeply personal. A teenager can feel part of a worldwide movement while forming unique emotional connections with specific stories and individuals. These connections become part of their identity, influencing self-perception and life choices. From a psychological perspective, digital solidarity fulfills several important functions. It satisfies the basic need for belonging, especially acute during adolescence. It provides emotional support and validation of personal experience. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Finally, it creates a sense of collective power. Together, we can change something. However, digital solidarity also has its dark side. The illusion of closeness can mask the superficiality of relationships. Emotional involvement in global problems can lead to psychological overload, and group identification sometimes gives rise to black and white thinking, dividing the world into us and them. What drives young people when they like a post about social injustice or share a petition in defense of the environment? Behind each such action lies a unique combination of internal and external motives that shape activist behavior in the digital space. Altruism and a desire for justice often become primary drivers. Research shows that Generation Z demonstrates a high level of empathy towards social problems. When a teenager sees a video about melting glaciers or discrimination against minorities, their natural reaction is a desire to help, to correct injustice. Digital platforms provide an instant opportunity to express this impulse. A repost, signing a petition, a donation. However, pure altruism rarely exists in a vacuum. Social recognition plays an equally important role. Every public act of online activism is also a statement of one's own values to the peer community. When a teenager expresses support for a progressive movement, they simultaneously signal their belonging to a certain social group and expect approval from significant others. Emotional involvement becomes a key factor in sustainable motivation. Social platforms masterfully use emotional triggers, personal stories, dramatic videos, shocking statistics. These elements evoke a strong emotional response: indignation, compassion, hope. Psychologists note that it is the emotional connection to a problem, rather than a rational understanding of its complexity, that most often sustains long-term engagement. Imagine social networks as a gigantic neural network, where each post is an electrical impulse capable of triggering a chain reaction. The algorithms of these platforms have transformed into powerful catalysts for activist behavior, shaping entire generations of young justice fighters, often without them even realizing it. Every time a teenager opens their news feed, an invisible curator has already selected content for them that is most likely to provoke an emotional response, capture their attention, and elicit a reaction. This personalization creates what researchers call information bubbles, closed content ecosystems where the user primarily sees opinions that coincide with their own. In such conditions, even moderate views tend to radicalize. A young person who expressed concern about environmental issues soon begins to receive increasingly emotional content about ecological catastrophe, forming a sense of impending apocalypse and the need for immediate action. The psychological effect of this mechanism is amplified by the viral nature of content dissemination. When thousands of peers simultaneously share the same video or hashtag, the phenomenon of social proof emerges. If everyone around considers it important, then it really is important. Add to this FOMO, fear of missing out, and you get a powerful psychological stimulus to join the movement. The mechanism of emotional mobilization through visual content is particularly interesting. Short videos depicting social injustice, environmental disasters, or political protests evoke an instant emotional reaction, which often transforms into a desire to act. Studies show that emotionally charged content is 40% more likely to go viral, and negative emotions, outrage, anger, fear, prove to be particularly effective triggers for mobilization. Social platforms create the illusion of a low barrier to entry into activism. One click can symbolically connect a person to a global movement. This is especially appealing to young people, who often feel powerless in the face of global problems. Digital activism offers an immediate sense of belonging and influence, even if the real impact of these actions remains questionable. When a young person presses the share button under a post about social justice, something more than just the dissemination of information occurs. At that moment, a complex process of value internalization is initiated. The transformation of external social norms into internal beliefs. Digital platforms become not merely a means of communication, but a powerful tool for shaping worldviews. Every repost, every comment is a micro-act of self-determination, a declaration to the world and to oneself. This is what I believe in. Modern teenagers form their value system amidst an unprecedented diversity of information. Unlike previous generations, where family, school, and immediate surroundings were the primary sources of moral guidance, today, digital opinion leaders actively intervene in this process. Influencers, bloggers, content creators. These new moral authorities transmit value orientations that young people sometimes absorb uncritically. Psychological studies show that teenagers are especially susceptible to the opinions of those they consider their own, those close in spirit, style, and language. Digital activists skillfully use this feature, creating content that resonates with youth identity, speaks their language, and appeals to their fears and hopes. This is how the moral compasses of an entire generation are finely tuned. However, the process of value formation through digital activism is not passive. Its healthiest form includes critical reflection on the information received. Young people ask questions, compare different viewpoints, and verify facts. This mechanism of critical evaluation allows them not just to copy others' beliefs, but to integrate them into their own value system, adapting them to personal experience and perception of the world. It is interesting to observe how abstract socio-political ideals are transformed into concrete behavioral attitudes. A teenager who regularly interacts with content about the climate crisis gradually begins to change their consumer habits. Someone who follows a social justice movement becomes more sensitive to manifestations of discrimination in everyday life. Digital activism extends beyond the online space, changing real behavior and life choices. We called it Slacktivism. Activism for the lazy, where a single tap on a screen creates the illusion of meaningful participation in solving global problems. A black square on Instagram against racism, changing an avatar in support of LGBT, reposting a petition to save the Amazon. These actions require minimal effort, but provide a maximum sense of moral righteousness. The psychological mechanism here is surprisingly elegant. We receive emotional reward for our civic stance without having to sacrifice comfort or resources. Our brain registers, "I did a good deed," and releases a dose of dopamine, amplified by likes from like-minded individuals. But beneath this chemical satisfaction lies a deep dissonance between the feeling of personal contribution and the actual impact on the problem. Young people are especially vulnerable to this phenomenon of self-deception. A teenager reposts a video about starving children, genuinely experiences a few minutes of emotional response, receives social approval, and his brain registers this as a completed moral action. The problem is solved. One can move on. Psychologists call this moral licensing, when a symbolic gesture creates a sense of fulfilled duty and paradoxically reduces the likelihood of real action. Studies show, the more active a person is in slacktivism, the less likely they are to participate in real campaigns or volunteering. Another mechanism is the illusion of belonging to a collective success. When a petition you signed among a million others leads to a result, there's a feeling of personal victory disproportionate to the actual contribution. This creates a distorted perception of the effectiveness of one's own actions and the scale of problems. Slacktivism often hides a fear of deeper involvement. Real activism requires confronting uncomfortable truths. Most social problems have no quick solutions. Change requires sustained effort, and results are rarely unambiguous. Digital activism offers a comfortable alternative. A simplified version of reality where moral choices are obvious and solutions are available with a single click. A constant stream of tragic news, endless discussions about social problems, a sense of personal responsibility for the fate of the planet. Digital activism can turn into an emotional meat grinder for a young person. Emotional burnout among young online activists is becoming an epidemic that we are only just beginning to talk about. 16-year-old Elisa, an active advocate for climate justice, admits, "Sometimes I wake up and the first thing I do is check the news about environmental disasters. By lunchtime, I already feel drained, but I continue to repost and comment. In the evening, I cry because the world is falling apart, and there's nothing I can do to change it." Psychologists call this state information overload with emotional exhaustion, when the brain literally drowns in a flood of negative stimuli, unable to process them. Our neural networks did not evolve to simultaneously empathize with the suffering of all humanity. We are biologically capable of emotionally connecting with a limited circle of people, up to about 150, according to Dunbar's number. Digital platforms destroy these natural limitations, creating the illusion of personal responsibility for global problems. Adolescents are particularly vulnerable, with their still developing mechanisms for emotional regulation. Their brains literally drown in stress hormones when they encounter a continuous stream of information about injustice, suffering, and catastrophes. This leads to a paradoxical effect: emotional numbness, when the psyche, in self-defense, blocks empathetic response. The activist continues to mechanically participate in online campaigns, but no longer feels the emotional connection to the problem that originally motivated them. Burnout also manifests as moral exhaustion, a state where a person loses the ability to make ethical decisions due to an overload of moral dilemmas. Every day, young activists face dozens of calls for help, petitions, campaigns. Which one to support? All seem important. This constant need for moral choice depletes psychological resources, leading to apathy or cynicism. So how can one remain engaged without destroying oneself? Psychologists suggest a strategy of mindful activism, a practice that combines social engagement with self-care. The first step is establishing information boundaries. Dedicated time for news, digital detox days, filtering information sources. The second is focusing on specific problems instead of trying to save the whole world at once. The third is connecting online activity with real, tangible actions that yield noticeable results. And finally, creating a supportive community where one can share not only information about problems, but also the emotional burden they cause. Like if you're also against. Such calls flood social media feeds, creating powerful group pressure, especially among teenagers. Conformity, the desire to align with group norms, takes on new, sometimes alarming forms in the digital space. Young people, in a period of active identity formation, are particularly vulnerable to this social pressure. Psychological studies show the desire to be accepted by a peer group is one of the strongest motivations in adolescence. In the online environment, this need is amplified by the public nature of all actions. When all friends change their profile pictures in support of a popular movement, a teenager faces a difficult choice: join in, even without fully understanding the issue, or risk becoming an object of condemnation and alienation. I put a rainbow flag on my profile picture because all my friends did it. Honestly, I didn't even really understand the topic. I was just afraid that I would be considered intolerant, admits 16-year-old Maria in an anonymous survey about the motives of online activism. Digital communities form their unwritten rules: which movements to support, which hashtags to use, which petitions to sign. Disagreement, or even neutrality, is often perceived as silent approval of the opposite position. Your silence is complicity. This phrase has become a mantra of modern activism, creating a false dichotomy where the absence of a public position is equated with supporting oppression. Conformity is especially strong in closed digital communities, where echo chambers are formed. Information bubbles where only group-approved opinions circulate. In such conditions, even moderate disagreement, or an attempt to present an alternative point of view, can lead to ostracism, modern digital exile. It is important to understand there is a fine line between genuine beliefs and performative activism. Many young people start with superficial participation for social approval, but gradually, by studying the problem deeper, they form genuine interest. Others remain at the level of checkbox activism, changing digital masks depending on current trends. Does the riposte button change the world, or just your self-perception? This is a key question that every young online activist faces. The transformation of virtual activity into real action is a psychological Rubicon that few cross. Why does this happen? Studies show that several psychological barriers exist between digital support for an idea and practical steps. The first is comfortable distance. Online activism does not require leaving one's comfort zone, whereas real actions involve uncertainty, possible rejection, and the need for personal interaction. The second is the illusion of completeness. When we share a petition or post, the brain registers it as a completed moral action, reducing motivation for further steps. The third is the skills gap. Digital literacy is not always accompanied by practical skills in organizing offline initiatives. However, powerful psychological motivators also exist for transitioning to real actions. The first is the need for tangible impact. Many young activists eventually realize the limitations of online influence and strive to see concrete results from their efforts. The second is social validation. When one's immediate environment supports not only virtual but also practical activity, the likelihood of real actions increases. The third is emotional burnout from information overload, paradoxically prompting concrete steps as a way to regain a sense of control. The story of 17-year-old Sophia vividly illustrates this transition. Starting with reposts about environmental problems, she gradually came to organize a school eco-club, and then a city initiative for separate waste collection. I realized that I could endlessly share shocking facts about plastic pollution, but it wouldn't remove a single bottle from the beach, she explains. Successful cases of transforming digital activism into real projects often follow a similar pattern. An online community of like-minded people, local meetings, pilot micro-initiatives, scaling successful practices. This is how the Fridays for Future movement was born, when Greta Thunberg's solitary protest spread through social networks, inspired millions of teenagers to real climate strikes around the world. It is noteworthy that digital tools do not disappear at the stage of practical implementation. They transform from the main field of activity into a means of coordination, documentation, and scaling real initiatives. Psychologists note that for healthy activism, a balance between digital and real dimensions is important. The online environment provides access to information, a support community, and a global context, while practical actions provide tangible results, skill development, and deep personal satisfaction. Together, they create a closed loop of positive influence, where the virtual inspires the real and the real enriches the virtual. Algorithmic echo chambers have become the invisible architects of our perception of the world. When a young person begins to take an interest in a particular social issue, digital platforms instantly recognize this interest and start saturating their feed with similar content. Gradually, a closed informational cocoon is formed, where each new message only strengthens already existing beliefs. This mechanism has deep psychological foundations. Our brain instinctively gravitates towards confirming its own views, a phenomenon known as confirmation bias. We tend to seek, remember, and value information that aligns with our beliefs. Social media algorithms amplify this natural tendency 1,000-fold, creating the illusion that everyone thinks like me. Teenagers are particularly vulnerable to this effect. In the age of identity formation, they seek clarity and certainty in their views. Echo chambers offer precisely this, a simplified, black-and-white picture of the world where social problems have obvious causes and solutions, and all dissenters automatically fall into the category of enemies. 17-year-old Maxim, an active animal rights advocate, admits, "I started noticing that I only saw posts about animal cruelty in my feed and nothing about positive changes. After 6 months, I was convinced that the whole world consisted of sadists and only our movement was trying to change something." This dangerous distortion of reality leads to the polarization of views, a process in which moderate positions disappear and extremes are amplified. In such conditions, dialogue becomes impossible and social problems insoluble. How then can we resist this psychological trap? Critical thinking becomes a key skill, the ability to question incoming information and one's own beliefs. For young activists, this means consciously stepping outside the informational bubble, reading sources with different viewpoints, communicating with people of differing beliefs, and constantly fact-checking. It is also important to develop awareness of information consumption, understanding how platform algorithms work and how they shape our perception. Digital literacy becomes not just a technical skill, but a necessary condition for psychological health in an era of information overload. Digital boundaries expand our horizons of empathy. When a teenager from a small Russian town sees the stories of peers from Africa, Latin America, or Southeast Asia, an amazing psychological transformation occurs. The circle of moral concern widens. Empathy, historically limited to one's immediate surroundings, now overcomes geographical, cultural, and social barriers. Neuropsychological research shows that the brains of modern teenagers exhibit unique activation patterns when perceiving the problems of people from distant communities. When 15-year-old Daria watches a video about girls' access to education in Afghanistan, the same brain regions are activated as when she worries about a close friend. This is a revolutionary change in human psychology, the ability to perceive distant others as part of one's moral universe. The mechanism of this empathy expansion is based on several psychological processes. The first is the personalization of global problems through personal stories. Abstract statistics about the climate crisis elicit less emotional response than a video diary of a teenager from a Pacific island whose home is being submerged. The second is the visualization of distant realities through photos and videos, making them tangible and concrete. The third is the creation of a sense of direct contact through comments, private messages, and joint online actions. This expansion of empathy leads to the formation of a global identity, a feeling of being not just a citizen of one's country, but part of the global community. Young people begin to perceive the planet's problems as their own. realizing the interconnectedness of social challenges in different parts of the Earth. Summarizing our study of the psychology of online activism, we see that the digital space has become not just a platform for expressing civic positions, but a true laboratory for the formation of the modern teenager's personality. The balance between virtual and real participation is a key challenge for young activists. Healthy online activism requires a conscious approach. Information hygiene, critical thinking, and emotional self-regulation. It is important to learn to distinguish meaningful actions from slacktivism, set digital boundaries, and translate virtual energy into concrete projects. Parents, educators, and psychologists can support this process by creating a safe space for discussing complex social issues, helping young people develop information literacy and emotional resilience. Adults should not devalue teenagers' digital activism. Behind reposts and hashtags lies a sincere desire for justice and a better world. Instead of criticism, it is more productive to channel this energy into constructive directions, showing pathways from online support to real changes. The future of civic participation will be increasingly hybrid, combining digital and real forms of activism. Augmented and virtual reality technologies, blockchain, and artificial intelligence will create new opportunities for engagement and coordination. The main thing is that the human essence of activism, the pursuit of justice, empathy, and care for others, is not lost behind technological innovations. The younger generation, raised in a digital environment, has a unique potential to create a more connected, conscious, and responsible society. A society where the virtual and the real complement each other in serving the common good.